The world of an education as an ELL teacher. When referring to students who are acquiring English, you will hear three different terms: ELL, ESL, and EFL. ELL stands for English Language Learners. ESL stands for English as a Second Language, and EFL stands for English as a Foreign Language. The difference between ESL and EFL is that ESL is when the students are acquiring the language in a culture that is primarily English speaking, and EFL is learning English in a non-English speaking country. The world of education as an ELL teacher. When referring to English learners, you often hear three terms: ELL, ESL, and EFL. ELL stands for English Language Learners. ESL stands for English as a Second Language, and EFL is for English as a Foreign Language. So what's the difference between ESL and EFL? In ESL, it is students learning English in a culture which language is primarily English. EFL is for students who are learning English in a non-English speaking country. What languages should the student be speaking in the classroom? Students should work to acquire English, but should not neglect their first language. The best way to do this is to encourage students to speak it at home, and maybe even teach the teacher as they begin to learn English. But the best context for students who speak different language is in a dual language classroom. What is a dual language classroom? A dual language classroom is a classroom that bridges languages and content, where students are taught in two different languages. Dual language programs typically begin in kindergarten or first grade and extend for at least 5 years, but some include middle school and high school. These schools assist students so their first language is maintained. This is through a maintenance program. So what if I, as the teacher, don't speak the first language that the student has? When planning a lesson, it is important to keep their English reading proficiency in mind and be sure that the lesson engages them wherever they are at and whatever language proficiency they have. The best support for students is to scaffold the instruction, even if they are beginning levels of English proficiency. You should also encourage peer interaction. They need time and practice to continue to speak English, and you should guide lessons to be communicative and discussion-based for all students. Another strategy would be to teach the content vocabulary. Content teachers should begin their lesson plan by keeping ELLs in mind, identifying not just vocab that every student needs to know, but other vocabulary words and grammar as well, with structures that ELL students may not be completely familiar with, but is an important aspect of every lesson that every student should be prepared for, including the ELLs. Another important idea is to build on prior knowledge. Working with students has a mindset of building blocks. You need to know where they started in order to keep building. Working with students' prior knowledge can be as simple as doing a KWL chart, being sure to fill in whatever gaps that the students have in their understanding. So what are the programs in a school with ESL and ELL? Within the programs, there can be a pull-out, push-in, or there could even be a general education classroom for that student. ESL and ELL programs can be different. Pull-out is a classroom that has a small number of students, typically 1 to 5 students per period of time. Push-in is when the ESL teacher may co-teach with a general education teacher, but there can also be a general classroom for all ELLs.